You may have been told by the likes of Elon Musk, Nick Bostrom, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that the world you see around you, all of these physical objects that I can touch and kick and feel and taste, everything, it's all a computer simulation running on some quantum computer by some alien somewhere out there in the metaverse. You've been duped. You have been tricked. It's a complete universe devised to ensnare your judgment and to ensnare all of our judgments. And to some extent, this is unfalsifiable. This is like Bertrand Russell's teapot. I can say there's a teapot somewhere out there, and so you say, show me the evidence, and that which can be asserted without evidence can be as well, of course, dismissed without evidence. And I don't see any good evidence of reality being a simulation. And yet, reality in some sense also must be a simulation, because regardless of whether we live and are embedded in some sort of simulated reality, at all of these levels, let's say there are a billion simulations, each nested within each other. One is simulating the evolutionary history of the next, and it's turtles all the way down. It's simulations. It's all fake. It's all an illusion. But there still has to be at that top level of that infinite regress an ultimate reality which simulates itself. So this is the metaphysical ontology principle that all of those things, even though they're separate universes theoretically, they must all still be real. And so reality, this is what Langen's breakthrough, this is the reality principle, or the metaphysical ontology principle, is that reality contains all and only that which is real. It must be defined according to its description of itself. And its description of itself, this is its structure, its extension is instantiated in the minds of secondary tellers, of human beings, of observer participants who exist within reality. So this would include human beings, of course. And perception, what that's doing is it's not just a passive process. I'm actually modeling something according to my intrinsic utility. What is utile to me? This is what I see. I don't see things in terms of their color or even physical properties. Essentially, I see them in terms of how they can be most utile to me. And so it's an objective modeling of reality according to my utility. Reality defines itself by this model and then extends that over all of time such that it create an environment whereby the most possible perception, the best modeling of reality, can be made manifest according to the secondary utility of its inhabitants. And where those secondary utility can line up with the primary utility of reality, which is to identify its own structure, those must be those are good tellers that and then it can define, reinforce, and extend its structure according to the mental patterns of what is the actual teleology of those beings. And so reality is a self-simulation through the God equation. And you can look at the green line. It's a metaformal system, so it's a language which is both describing reality but also creating the reality it describes. It's both a language which is also instantiating what it's referring to. So it's an intrinsic language. It's a metalinguistic meta-object, which factorizes itself into two semi-models, the conspansive semi-model, so this is the conspansive manifold, a metamathematical structure, which actually defines and describes the evolution of reality as it's occurring in real time and allows it to adapt to these various utility functions, and the linear ectomorphic semi-model, the objective language. This is the subjective language, this is the objective language, this is what you actually see. And so it's a simulation in this sense, because this you can think of as heaven, as this potentialization, as this spirit world whereby true and good order is extracted according to the utility of various telons. You can think of these as actually, this is essentially angels are communing with one another. They are according to this intrinsic utility of God, they're messengers and actualizers of God's will. And so there's this spirit world whereby all these various utility functions are being tested against one another and seeing what is most utile to God. You can think of it as a hologic self-simulative scratch pad whereby embedded in every point in the real universe is this potentialization, and then there's the actualization of the earth. And so that is informing the spiritual meaning of the earth, and then the earth itself is the actual instantiation of that, and those two are connected in a fundamental level. In Genesis 1 it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was formless and void. But actually the better translation of that is, when God began to create the heavens and the earth is formless and void. So it's extracting out of true and good order from this primordial potential. And so this is a quote by Matthew Pageau, that reality, and this actually closely corresponds with the structure of the metaformal system, is that reality is a fractal language which is self-similar at every level, like a giant Romanesco broccoli, and which reflects the structure of heaven and earth. So it's what is actually being simulated. The simulated, the simulator, and the simulatee are all this intrinsic language which is taking on various forms. And this is, in the Hindu tradition, you can see this in the distinction between Maya and Brahman. Maya is the self-simulation of Brahman. So Maya, this means illusion, and then this becomes our word for matter in the physical world. So this is the surface structure of what is actually being represented to us. This is what we can see, but there's something deeper, there's something unseen, there's this deep structure which relates to ultimate reality, and that is Brahman. Brahman is unconditioned, ultimate reality, ipsum esse subsistens, the sheer act of being itself, and this is what is being simulated. So you can think of Brahman as M, as the metaformal system at the large, and then Maya as sigma. It's the actual instantiation of that in the minds of what I can directly observe without any, real consideration on the nature of reality. And this is, we've discussed with Donald Hoffman's conscious agent theory, that what we see is not, his theory is that what we see is not reality itself, but it's reality as, evolution has primed us to see it, because we have these various utility functions, and a lot of these actually don't select for the objective modeling of reality. And you have this participatory universe with this idea by John Wheeler, whereby the reality is parameterized by the secondary utility of its inhabitants. And if we combine these two, it's actually a simulation for the purpose of the secondary utility, such that the simulation is for the people being simulated, such that we can every human being, or even more broadly, every observer participant in reality, which is, was, or ever will be, they all have these competing utility functions. And when you take all of these, when you abstract out the true and good order from what can actually allow this to exist and evolve over the longest possible period of time, logically, then you have the primary teller, this will of Brahman, of ultimate reality, to create the simulation. And so there's actual meaning in the Maya. We're able to transcend this, and we have this created world, but you also have an ultimate heavenly world. And the purpose of this is the purpose of reality is to connect creation back to its creator. This is how John the Scot, the Irish Neoplatonist philosopher, actually defined the logos, is that which calls creation back to its creator. And this is the purpose, so that then you have a joint structure, which when these two are reconciled, you have a joint structure which can identify and recognize itself in itself. So this is the nous which creates reality. This cosmic mind is the light by which the one sees itself, and so it can identify itself with this extended structure. It's taking all of the secondary tellers which have been utile to it over all of time, and it's defining, reinforcing, and extending its structure according to this utility. So there's a very clear and important reason for the reality self-simulation. So evolution itself is untrue, because if you just had evolution, if reality was just the unfolding of a predetermined evolutionary history, what people don't understand is people think evolution can describe any change in the system. Evolution actually means basically unfolding. It's a predetermined history which is essentially scripted, and that's unfolding. It's just as I'm reading down, it's like reading a book. I'm not changing the words when I'm reading them. I'm not changing the words. It's already predetermined. I'm just going through them, and there are already states assigned to future temporal states. And so evolution itself is untrue because the reality can't be deterministic if it's evolving according to these various utility functions. It has to be generative. We have to actually be not only observers in the creation of reality, but observer participants. It's generative. It couples this evolution with involution, the actual inward structure of its syntactors and tellers, in order to exist and evolve and display future utile states. And so this true and good order is being extracted out of all the things which could possibly be represented. And this is the purpose, this is the telos of reality. This is what it's intrinsically striving for. And there are these telons, these angels, which are a series of directed goals and aims which are seeking to fulfill themselves. Reality everywhere in this self-simulation is the will to exist. And so where the simulation is an input and corresponds to an input and output, the reality simulation is actually all of these things adapting to an intrinsic teleology. So the reality simulation is both input, the processor, and the output. This is all contained in one ontic identity. And reality, and by the metaphysical ontology principle, reality's description of itself must include the input, the processing, and the output, so that it omits no essential predicate. So essentially it's both accepting, it's taking in and recognizing state, and then it's transducing that, it's actually transforming the structure of that according to its own structure, according to its self-determined reaction to a certain thing. It has this free will, and then when you couple that free will with teleology, with the intrinsic striving towards a goal, it's able to model systems of organic complexity, such as the creation of galaxies, star systems, biological life. All of this is reflected as the will of the living God in the reality self-simulation. And let the light shine forth in the darkness, may the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe.